Good evening. Will the Public Service Committee meeting of Monday, November the 18th, please come to order. The time is 5:32. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes. We actually have two sets of minutes to approve tonight. We have our regular meeting from October the 21st, along with the special meeting that we held on September the 18th to approve.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the October 21st, 2024 meetings along with the September 18th, 2024 meeting.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Both minutes from September the 18th and along with October the 21st have been approved. Next item on the agenda is public participation. Seeing none, we'll move into project updates. Mr. Testa or Mr. Davis, you're going to do those?
I guess that we need it.
Okay.
I'm kind of your third string quarterback now.
Just like the Browns, just like the Browns, all right.
So I'm still familiarizing myself with the project, so bear with me on that. I thought I would probably reorganize these in a kind of sequence of where they are in the progress of the projects. So with water first, we have one that's been nearly complete, which is Wolf Avenue. That is something that we need to have a resolution of intent in order to get our OPWC funding completed. So that's something that will be coming to council here very shortly to authorize us to accept that OPWC funding of $560,000. For projects in construction, we have almost completed. We have the water treatment plant improvement phase 1. There was an issue with the flow meter that's delayed final completion. That's scheduled for January. So that's something that is nearly completed. For upcoming projects for new bidding that we're going to have for new construction projects, pending budgetary approval, we have 3 that are pretty much ready to bid once we have budgetary approval. Tolbert Water is one. The airport water looping project is a second one. And then the Bird PRV project is the third. So those 3 will pretty much be ready to bid as we get the budgetary approval for those. Then projects that are currently in design, there's a water treatment plant demonstration study that's going on, design now with Stantec. There's a tower rehab for the Bird Tower rehab project that is right now in kind of a scoping. We just selected consultants working on that at the very early stages of design. And so that's the gamut of water projects we have kind of in that reverse order of progress. Mm-hmm. If you have any questions on those.
Nope, we're good. You can move on. Wastewater, go ahead, move right down the line. Mm-hmm.
So then for wastewater, same idea. So the ones that are in the complete side, we just have authorized a final report for smoke and dye testing. These are areas 2, 3, 5, 7, and 10 for those who are tracking. So those final reports are coming, and that project will be closed out any day. For projects that are in construction, we have I guess we'll say construction in the process. There's a lining and rehab project that's being done with United Survey. That's going on right now. There's some videotaping and things that are being done as we speak. So, and then for bidding projects, we've just recently completed a bid process for one of the SSO, the manhole project for what's called SSO 4. Northeast Ohio Trenching Services is the bidder who was selected, and that's scheduled for pre-con in December once we get all the paperwork done for that. And then for design, there is one project that's nearing completion design that actually is not something engineering did, but the wastewater treatment plant folks, is a cover repair that they've been involved with. There's some damage to one of the covers there that they wanted to repair, so that's something that will be coming likely for construction here this next year. And then just as a note for something in the horizon for wastewater, the SSO removal projects are kind of an ongoing EPA issue, and the smoke and dye testing we've just completed will then feed some of the design we can do for those SSO projects that are to come next year. And then other than that, there's few other projects on the horizon, but won't get into much into that. So that's my update as far as I know.
Okay. No other questions there. We'll move on. The fiber project, Mr. Tester, you doing that one, or?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The fiber project continues to go well. We're still sitting at about 200 installations, and part of that is because over the last week, our guys have switched to verifying a lot of the splicing work that's done. So the contractor, Gudenkopf, has done a lot of work without sending us an invoice. Now that they're preparing the invoice and we've got all the details, we're verifying that some of that work's done. And we also replaced, or I shouldn't say replaced, we had one of the installers that's been on a medical leave really for most of the installation time. We have backfilled that position by adding another employee, and that employee started this past week. We've switched 119 people over to the Wi-Fi solution in Weatherstone. We've got 9 installations recently in Mount Eaton Estates, 11 on Mills, 19 on Simcox, and over the course of really the next month, our project manager will be focusing on verifying some of the work that's done, but we're also going to be finishing up all of the testing in Weatherstone. So if you remember with the underground areas, the way that it works is that we get everyone in an area set up on a Wi-Fi solution, so they really don't lose any service while we're spending extra time pulling the lines out of the underground conduits and then replacing them with fiber. Once that's done in an area, everybody that's on the Wi-Fi solution can be pulled off of that, and then really, without going back to the house, we're able to turn those people on. So the anticipation is over the next few weeks, we should have everybody set up in that area with the permanent solution. So it's going well. We're heading in towards a colder season, but at this point, underground work will continue. The aerial work has passed about 2,000 homes. It really, I mean, the project was going well at this point.
Okay. Any other questions on it? All right, next.
How is that going to work? How do you do it? Do you have something you put in the home to do a Wi-Fi, or is it a neighborhood where?
Yeah, so what happens is there's basically a temporary Wi-Fi connection that's placed in the yard of each house.
Okay.
It somewhat looks a little bit almost like first base, and that it's basically just a white square box. That accepts a Wi-Fi signal from kind of a roving Wi-Fi setup that Aspen has built on top of water towers. So it's beaming down to this receiver, and the receiver then is just going through kind of the connecting cable that would go into the house to the router now. So they're being switched off the existing cable connection for internet, and they're replaced with this high-speed Wi-Fi. Then when the underground fibers are ready, the Wi-Fi comes off, and then the drop cables that connect to the house, that's a quick piece of that, because all of that stuff is being built out while they're on Wi-Fi.
Thank you for that, because I know the question's going to come up in the community.
Yeah, we have a pretty good system for really making sure folks are not down for any period of time, other than that, switch over time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, next item up is the EV charging station. I know between our last meeting and this meeting, you had your meeting with NOACA.
Yeah, so I'm still waiting on some usage data from NOACA, but I would say based on the meeting we had, I didn't feel that they were as much up to speed as we were on some things. They were surprised to find out that this performance warranty was priced at $16,400. They didn't know that. As we get into the meeting, and other people were basically complaining about the same thing. What was offered up is that we have a choice of, in addition to the performance warranty, we could look at an extension of the basic warranty. The difference between the two is that the performance warranty, the expensive one, basically covers malfunctions, problems with the equipment, damages if the station is vandalized or hit by a car or something like that. This basic warranty that apparently we have for 2 years can be extended for another 3 years, so to cover the 5-year period. The total cost of doing that looks like it's about $2,500. And that would provide, basically, you know, if the equipment malfunctions or there's a problem with that equipment, it would be covered under that piece of it. And then, you know, presumably somebody backing into the station or something like that, you know, our insurance, their insurance would pay for that. The only piece that would be left out is if somebody were to vandalize that. So I'm at a point where I've updated a lot of the analysis. I want to get their usage estimates to plug that into some of the estimates that I've prepared. But I would say that based on a recent kind of market survey that I've done, it appears that the two most prevalent mechanisms for charging are either like a dollar per session, let's say, or you know, a fixed fee for the session, or some type of variable rate that is based on a kilowatt hour. I would say that by and large, you're probably looking at you know, an average of about 30 cents on that. You know, what I am planning to do is building in the piece that covers our cost of supply of electric, the proportionate cost, since we have an electric department of you know, the electric department, but again, you're talking probably, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 cents per kilowatt hour. We are not allowed, I found out at the meeting, we are not allowed to recoup the cost of the station or, you know, a replacement station as part of our pricing model. We can include and will include the 15% processing fee that Flo, the manufacturer, has provided. So the work that I've done, I've basically got a couple of bookends that are estimating, hey, I think maybe we use 15,000 kilowatt hours with this station a year, maybe it's 45,000. The reason there's a difference there is because the piece that I haven't figured out and what I'm waiting on NOACA to provide is for a typical charge session, you know, what percentage of the battery is depleted when they come in there? In other words, you know, if somebody's coming in typically when their entire battery is ready to be charged and they're there and that counts as a session, you know, maybe that's 60 kilowatt hours for that charge session versus somebody that might be coming in to top off, so to speak, when they've got, you know, maybe they're only down 20% on their capacity, so the sessions would be much shorter. I would say most of the people that went to the meeting do not appear to have turned on their stations. One person did say they turned on their station, and they were at a community college, and they said over the 3 weeks since they've turned it on, the station had not been used. I expect and was actually hoping I would have that usage data today because the analysis is really ready to go in terms of what the pricing would be. But our concern about, you know, a large incremental piece to build into the rate because of the replacement costs of the station, we can't do that, so that would take that off of the table. And from NOACA, you know, to be fair to NOACA, it's more because those are the federal, those are the requirements that were attached to the federal dollars that flowed through to us. So that wasn't their particular rule.
So we do have a 2-year warranty with just a basic warranty on the equipment and everything, not, you know, somebody backing into it. So we have the 2-year warranty, and then what appears is the $2,500, which wasn't offered initially, would cover the following 3 years after, not concurrent with, but after the 2-year warranty that comes with the product. That would cover it for the 5 years.
That's right, and the reason I say approximately is because during the meeting they said, hey, look, for your 2 standard level 2 chargers, that extending that maintenance agreement for the other 3 years is only $60 a year. So it'd be $180 for one of those, $180 for the other. Mm-hmm. And then the fast charger, they said that's typically $650 a year, but basically you get a year free. So if you buy 2, you get the 3rd year free. So together, that would only bring it to roughly about $1,600. I got an email from NOACA today saying, oh, but there's also some kind of commissioning fee for those two, which would, $2,500 should cover all of it, but I haven't had an opportunity to get feedback from them yet as to, okay, do we have it all in here now so we know? But I would say that, if you take that cost and spread that out over 5 years, I think the impact to whatever rate we decide on would be relatively minimal.
Okay, well, I know we don't want to spend all our time on that this evening, especially since we'll move on till next month. But again, thank you. Were there any other questions?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Dave.
well, I do. Maybe a comment, not so much a question, but at a council meeting when Sheets was here, we had to do some legislation, and I went up and talked to the representatives, and I asked them about charging stations. What was on the site plan. Haven't seen it. Maybe you guys have seen that, but they were talking to 4 companies, on the Sheet station on 9th Street about putting charging stations in. That would be a competitor to us. So, your total usage, what you think it might be today, might drastically be changed because it's an off-highway point. So I just wanted to make that note.
Yeah.
I don't know how you factor that in. Mr. Hiscock, you said on that, have you seen the site plan?
Yes.
Do they have?
I believe there are locations identified for potential EV charging stations on that site, along actually the exit ramp to the interstate, I believe, that part of the parcel.
Okay.
I don't know if their plan is to install those right away or where they've gone. But
I'm still of the opinion that we were told it wasn't going to cost the taxpayers anything. I will not support $2,500.
All right, I just wanted to bring that comment up. So if there's any planning, what we think the usage might be, it could be changed drastically. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Nothing else, then we will move on to the operating budget review. First item under there is all the governmental funds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple items here. On the agenda, I've listed by section the various operating budgets that we'll cover. At the end of each particular item, I've got a comma and then a number. That number refers to the respective page in the main budget book. As we go through, I'll go through some more detailed information, and if you're following along on the transaction reports, I'll point out what page number that refers to as well. But for the most part, I will kind of cherry pick items either that I want to bring to your attention or that I think you may have an interest in, or that there's a departure or something new, but I would invite you to ask questions about anything that you have a question about. I will also say that, there's some items on here that we may not end up covering it, and that's only because after I sent this out, I realized that, when Tom did the economic development budget last month, and remember we were doing capital budgets and then going to go into operating, he basically did a pretty good overview of the entire budget, and there's not a ton of capital there, so we've kind of gone through that piece of it, and then Fund 245, which relates to the CRAs, Tom covered that as well. So there may be some things in here that I'll go through, and I'll just point out that, hey, I think we may have covered these, but let me bring these to your attention, and then if you have questions, we'll answer them. Otherwise, we might go through those a little bit more quickly. So the first budget that we're going to go over is page 42 in the main budget book, and in the transaction reports it would be page 93. So this is the service director's office budget. What I'll point out, revenues, as with a lot of the administrative departments, are really just kind of the cost allocation of those department costs, and they're allocated out to various other departments who include in their budget expenses, and that's what you'll see. So for example, charges for services, you'll often see cost allocation for the service director, the auditor, law director, and that's the mechanism of what's behind the revenues there. On the expense side of things, under personnel expenses, the 2025 proposal for wages and salaries, about $460,000, and there are really four positions that are built into here. So we've got service director, 2 assistant service directors. If you remember, we added one at the beginning of last year. We also have basically the service department's administrative assistant built in here. So that's why you see an increase, for example, from 2023 to 2025, is because we've basically added the second assistant service director in there. As we go through some of the operating expenses, we've got expenses built in for education and meeting. That would really be for the service director, both assistant service directors. It includes things like the American Public Works Association conference. It includes things like continuing education, for example. For me, there's reserve built in there for whatever particular training that may be useful or of interest to the new service director when one is hired. I do want to highlight something in our budget, because you'll see this in a number of budgets, but as you get down to, and we're on page 95, under 53035, IT software and support, there's an item for $12,500 in the description of that is administration's share of plan review permitting software. So we've budgeted basically software costs in a number of budgets for this. So let me pull up my notes here so you can, just to give you an overview of. So we've got some monies budgeted in economic development, we've got some monies budgeted in planning, we've got some in the safety director's budget, some in the service director's budget. I think overall we've got approximately about $88,000 budgeted. I will say that at one point when we looked at software through our budget provider, OpenGov, the prices were pretty crazy. I mean, they came back with a 3-year deal that was, about $200,000. That seemed excessive to us. So we built in what we think is an ample budget that's more realistic with, finding something that meets our needs. But that is one item that you will see in our budget, and I will point that out in some of the other budgets that we go through, but together they sum up in the neighborhood of about $88,000.
What type of plan review and everything, because now we use them in the Edina County Building Department. What are we, because, I mean...
So this is something that actually I spoke with Mr. Williams quite a bit about earlier this year. We had identified that there is inefficiencies in the ability of both residents and contractors to easily navigate and prepare our permits or construction required information. And so we looked at and talked with several different communities that were identified, communities in Tennessee, communities throughout Ohio that had what we felt was user-friendly interfaces for people where if I had to request a fence permit or something and I could fill it out online on the weekend and have it submitted so that it's in the office on Monday for reviews to be done, kind of thing. So we were looking at that kind of plan review permitting type software, and that's what Mr. Testa's making reference to. The reason we spread it amongst multiple different departments was because there are multiple different permits that go to different departments. For instance, if you have a road closure permit, it comes to administration oftentimes if it's for an event-oriented item. If you have a fence permit or a backyard construction permit or any of those types of pool permitting, those kind of things, it's different areas within the city. And then our building and planning division, and primarily the building official, had a lot of permitting related items. Those needs will probably migrate over to the county, as you referenced. But we still have quite a bit of permitting needs that will still come through the city, as well as through the engineering divisions and some of those plan reviews. So that's the idea of making a more user-friendly approach. I think we've made great advances in trying to streamline some of the processes and procedures. This was something we were hoping to get to, but quite honestly, we faced a budgetary impediment of implementing it this year. It also gave our team time to review lots of different alternatives, and so we built into the budget what we think is a good process for us. to acquire something like this in '25.
Thank you for that.
I commend the administration for going forward with anything that could make it easier for our citizens to improve their properties or whatever. I appreciate that.
Well, Mr. Williams pointed us to some really pretty unique ones, and those entities actually pointed us to other ones that they found pretty user-friendly. So we wanted, obviously, budgetarily friendly, user-friendly for both the most tech-savvy and least tech-savvy citizen, if you will, but also contractor robust enough that contractors could get their information into us and permitting it, and then something on the back end where we could use to kind of electronically file and show a history of where it is, so someone could go and say, what's going on with my permit? They could actually see who's touched it, where it was, and that kind of thing. So we were looking at those kind of options and availability in software.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you.
I don't have any other items on the service director's office budget.
Yeah, I do. Professional services, you have outside engineering and project management, and there was a big increase there, $100,000. So could you explain that for me?
I could field that one, Mr. Testis. So based upon the amount of large capital projects that we have proposed in the budget, and knowing by experience that sometimes we don't have enough hours in the day to handle that on the engineering side of things, I wanted to give us flexibility and the ability to go outside to hire an entity to help us with a project or two. And so that's what that funding design was for. I would draw your attention, for instance, to the delivery model we used with the fire station construction. I think we really put construction management on an outside entity, but there's a fee for that kind of work. So for instance, if we were going to put the brickyard forward and we did design in the beginning of construction next year, it'd be nice to maybe use a construction manager at risk approach to handle that particular project on that. So we put in really a number that we kind of came up with based upon some discussions. Don't know how solid a number that may be, but it was the design to be able to maybe get some more efficiency, some accountability out of our project management team, and use an outside entity to manage a project, or if we could, in next year's budget. So that was the design.
You only use half of it. What happens to the rest? Can it be allocated other places, or does it have to stay in that fund and then goes back to the general fund? What happens if you don't use it all?
That would stay in the general fund. It could be used in other places, but usually we try to avoid doing that if at all possible, especially in something that's new like this. I would like it to be immeasurable. So let's say we approved 100 grand for those services. We used 80 of that. The rest of it remained there. We did not use it. It goes back into the general fund, if you will.
Okay.
It's a new idea, and it's something that I'd like us to try. We've seen some success with the new project delivery model that's available to us, but we need trackable data to see what we're actually spending in those areas, rather than just reallocating it and using it somewhere else.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Our next budget is 110-3010 Center for Older Adults. This is our senior center, the Suprema Senior Center. It's page 55 in your budget book, but we're looking at page 121 if you're in the transaction reports. The one item that I'll point out in the personnel expenses is that right now we have 2 full-time staff and 1 part-time administrative assistant, just because we've had really explosive growth since we've come back from COVID. This budget moves that 3rd person from a part-time 25 hours a week to full-time next year. If you have had an opportunity to look at the quarterly newsletters that are distributed, you'll see that we almost don't have a blank spot during the day anywhere in our calendars, because there's been such an increase in programs. We've got, we started off after COVID with a food service operator that didn't pan out. The food service operations have since been taken over by the Medina County Office of Older Adults, although they're in the process of changing their name to the Medina County Senior and Adult Services organization. But really, we've had tremendously good feedback. The portion sizes are good, the quality of the meals, the service, all of that is really, they've been knocking it out of the park. I mention that because it makes it that much easier for folks to come during the day for a program, and then maybe they go in there and they have something to eat, or they stay after and play cards or games. There's a puzzle table in there. So there's just quite a few more people coming through the center every day. And I think, you know, we've added a couple hundred new members. The total membership, and certainly not everybody comes actively, but you know, the total membership rolls are about 4,000 to 5,000 people. So it makes sense to add Amy, so Lori Wilkinson, who is our basically the manager, the director of that area. Tammy basically took over for Lori as the volunteer coordinator, and then Amy, if you remember Liz years ago, who was kind of the assistant there, Amy has taken over for Liz, and really they're just for three of them, they get a lot of stuff done, very dynamic and well liked and respected by the senior centers members. If you move to page 122 in your transaction reports, I'll draw your attention to account 53070.05, contracted services building. You'll see that we've budgeted $9,500 for general building items. So, you know, one of the things that we've experienced over the last couple of years is that, you know, the senior center, which was really built the same time the rest of the high school complex was built, is now, you know, 10, 11 years old, and a lot of things, you know, break down. It could be something like one of the hot water tanks that feeds the kitchen. It's one of the air handlers. We've had issues with a couple of those in the cafe ceiling. We've had some improvements in the restrooms. The freezer doors, we've had trouble with the ice machine. A lot of different things are starting to go. And typically what we've done in the past is just try to you know, borrow from Peter to pay Paul, and now we've built in some money to cover unexpected repairs as they come up. And Mr. Parrish, this would work similar to the professional services and the service director's budget, that if this money is not spent, it just rolls back into the general fund. Below that, you'll see that a couple of items that say enterprise fund and operating fund, community center shared account. So every year we budget kind of as a group the different partners that have an interest in the senior center, and from our standpoint, the schools don't have anything to do with this, so it's typically been the library, the YMCA, Summa Health System, at the city, and to a small extent WCTV, but basically every year contribute toward the operating expenses and capital improvements by including in their budget respective share of the expected expenses and contributions. Overall, in 2025, the expected expense would be about $105,000, roughly 24% of that, or $25,000, would be paid by the city, and that's 14 of that would be coming out of the senior center, as you see here. 4 of it comes out of WCTV, and then there's about 7,000 for just the city's share of kind of the common areas out there. The Y it is expected to contribute about $75,000 next year, and Summa would contribute about 15. The library, really their presence out there, it isn't really a presence anymore, so there's nothing for them to kick in. So all of those contributions come in. The city kind of handles all of that, but we'll receive that money in from our partners out there. In the long-term capital stuff, you know, that's money that gets saved up for the eventual roof or for parking lot improvements, things like that. The operating expenses are typically, you know, things like snow plowing, landscaping, maintenance contract, the annual maintenance contract on the HVAC system, things like that. So this will be another one where in a couple different budgets you'll see these same line items referencing the respective shares of our partners. In this budget, we also pay the city's contribution for the Medina County Transit. MC Flex program, the buses that are set in use for Wadsworth, there's been a pretty significant increase in usage. I would say, the seniors use these seniors use this transportation quite a bit, but it's not only seniors. So typically about 35% of the ridership are people that are younger than 59, and the bulk of that group is using it to get to and from work. So there's a lot of usage. Obviously, 2/3 of it is for people that are over 60. But a couple of things have happened over the past really year and a half. One is they dedicated 2 buses to the City of Wadsworth, where we had originally had one. And the pricing here really is kind of designed to the $30,000 equating to $15,000 a bus, if you will, is basically the same pricing model that they use with Brunswick and Medina. Now they have 3 buses, so they pay $45,000, but the costs have also increased too. You've got increases in labor costs for county folks that are operating the budgets. You've got increases in fuel costs because they're driving more, because they're getting more usage. But I would say overall the program has been well received. I think David, Tom, I know you guys have been out there and have heard citizens talk about the usage of this, and it's been a good thing. Last year we budgeted a total of $15,000, but if you remember at the beginning of the year we asked for another $5, because what had happened is after we put our budget together, they came back and said, hey, we think we need another $5,000. So that was why we came back and made that ask. I do not anticipate that happening again, meaning if we approve the budget with 30, I'm not anticipating them to come back and ask for anything additional.
I want to commend you on the cultural change of putting forth money in the budget for maintenance. So making that cultural change to make sure seniors are robbing Peter to play ball. And then how are we going to follow through on that so we can make that change throughout, so people get to that idea that we don't have to do that and we can, we're going to fix things. So that's what I'm looking. So how are we going to further institute that?
Yeah, well, it was easy to see at the senior center because of just the nature of particularly the cafe equipment that goes bad in there. Contractually, we're on the hook for. But I would say in all of our operating budgets, they have kind of the similar slate of accounts. So our guys are supposed to be, and they typically do, budget something for what they think are going to be HVAC issues or door replacements or things like that. It's just that I think it's more noticeable at the senior center because a lot of what they do is people oriented. It's not equipment, it's not facilities. You don't normally think in those terms, so it's easier for that to stand out. But within the budgets, you'll often see those type of maintenance items, particularly for smaller dollar amounts, built into the operating budget side of things.
Again, I want to say, how are we going to implement that now that we've brought the money? So how are we going to make sure that this becomes somewhat of a priority? We're looking at things like this fence needs to be straightened, or something needs to be painted, and there's money in the budget. I'm talking throughout. So that's what I'm looking for, because we made the cultural change financially. We want to move that on, and so I just want to bring that up to a point. I think that would be the next step, and I'm hoping we have a plan for that.
Yeah, I would say, 2 things about that. One of the things in particular with the capital budget plan that we put together is that, we kind of divvied it up into sections. And one of the sections that we specifically ask our folks to look at is things related to their facilities. So, we say, hey, look at your equipment, but look at your facilities, look at your infrastructure, and plan out those big things. Things that are smaller than that, make sure, it literally is us just saying, hey, make sure you stick this in the budget. Now, we review those budgets with them too, so, we're looking at those things and asking questions, hey, is this really needed? Is this the best way to do that? But I would say that our guys have been pretty decent about that. In particular, the money, that $9,500, that's more a kind of a set aside for if something breaks down, we fix it. One of the things that we've done over the last couple of years in that budget in particular is that we have identified things proactively that we know we want to set aside money and pay for. So for example, over the last year, we addressed ADA doors for the restrooms. You'll see that one of the next line items in here is a couple $1,000s to pay for someone to come in and basically raise the toilet seats a little bit higher so it's easier for folks to get up and down. Lori is very good about identifying those things in advance. But it's also a population that shares its opinions pretty readily. And it's also a population, too, where, you've got a lot of the people that have the same needs. So it's easy to do those, but we've encouraged all of our folks to make sure you're building in there what you need, because we don't want to be surprised. And frankly, me in particular, it's kind of a pain in the butt to have to go through and look for money and try to swap things around in the middle of the year. So we try to have everybody give some consideration, build in what they think they're going to need, and then when we review the budget a couple times throughout the year, we're also asking them to update their estimates. So if you don't think you're going to spend it, then you need to liquidate the encumbrance. If you think that, oh boy, I budgeted $5,000, we're going to need this and it's going to be $6,200, then we're looking at that saying, okay, what does that mean? Do we need to do an appropriation adjustment, a supplemental appropriation? So Matt has been very good at telling our managers we're going to support this stuff. So put it in there. Don't leave it out thinking it's not going to get funded. Put it in there because at the very least we want to know about it and address it in one way or another.
Thank you.
So the toilet raising was the line item directly under the $7,000 for the community center. We talked about the $30,000 for Medina County Transit. I'll point out toward the bottom of page 123, you'll see that there's $7,000 under grant materials and supplies. This is materials related to a caregivers group, and we receive funding from the Western Reserve Area on Aging. So this is really a wash. We have the revenue come in, pass through. That's what that is. And I don't have any other specific comments about the senior center. The recreation fund is typically related to things at the community center or that property out there. I'll point out that on page 125, you can see various contributions from our partners. So if you tally these up, plus the 14 in the senior center budget and what's in WCTV, that's where we get to approximately the $105,000. Below that, in account 53160, we budgeted $19,000 for the janitorial contract with the YMCA. So 5 days a week at the end of our business day, an employee from the YMCA comes in and provides janitorial services. So they're cleaning the cafe, they're emptying trash, they're cleaning the bathrooms, those type of things. And that's what that contract's for. We also have written into the contract that, if there's kind of special things that need to be done, if somebody has an accident in the restroom or if somebody's been sick or something, that's outside of their normal end-of-day service, but they will come over and usually for $25 clean that up. The last item in the, I think I missed one here. We've got debt service, about $300,000 on the outdoor pool. I thought we had the, oh, there it is. So underneath the janitorial contract with the YMCA, 2 lines down, you'll see skimmer basket repairs, and we budgeted $30,000. So in short, the skimmer baskets are basically part of the filtration system, and they're designed to basically catch and prevent debris from getting into the pool pumps. The $30,000 is really paying to either repair or replace about 24 of those. The reason it's so expensive is because a lot of that stuff, you need to break up the concrete to get to it and then put the concrete back. So this was an item that the Y had suggested needed to be done the last couple of years. So this year we've budgeted it here. And that's all I had on 204, the Recreation Fund. The Recreation Tax Fund, 255, that would be something we cover under Ways. Next up is 213 WCTV. I'll mention on the first page, which is 127 of your transaction reports, about 92% of their revenue comes from a franchise fee. This is basically payments from cable companies for cable TV services. You know, there's not been a huge impact at this point, but you know, one of the concerns is, you know, down the road as more entities switch from cable services to streaming services, you know, it's reasonable to think that this revenue stream will decrease. And I say reasonable because, you know, I'm not sure if, you know, the rule, you know, the guys that make the rules will switch it and then say, hey, a portion of your streaming services has to pay for public TV too. But for the most part, 92% or so pays for WCTV's operations. One item that I'll point out, well, let me point out a couple of their larger expenses. On page 130, you'll see an item for $7,000 for VBIT on-demand streaming. So this is basically the website and technology that when somebody goes to watch WCTV and they can just choose what it is they want to download and watch, this is the platform that allows them to do that. We've also got $30,000 budgeted here. If you remember, during the capital budgets, I mentioned AV upgrades for council chambers, which would be new projector, high-def projector, the TriCaster, which is basically the device that's taking that signal and allows you to switch camera angles and camera, you know, views, new cameras, those type of things. So the bulk of that, and we're estimating somewhere in the neighborhood of about 45,000. The bulk of that is budgeted here. The other 15 for the projector itself is actually in the IT budget. We budget about $4,500 for food, supplies, those type of things for the annual Clapper Awards. They were held most recently on the 12th. And that is basically an award show where you're recognizing best-in-class videos of all different things in the community from different producers. And that has been an annual item. So that includes food, plaques, awards, venue, rental, those type of things. And I don't really have anything else on WCTV. Next one, abatement of public nuisance. Kind of jump ahead to page 152 in your transaction reports. Again, you'll see $10,000 here for a share of the permitting software. You've got $16,000 budgeted for, you know, house demos and asbestos removal, and then $6,000 budgeted for contracted services to cut grass. Next up is our vehicle maintenance fund. And if you go to page 158, I'll just point out some of the parts expenses. You know, we pay for basically service manuals every year, and there's been some decent increases in those, so we'll spend about $10,000, particularly on Ford-based manuals, which makes up a large portion of our fleet. We've got other software in here that you know, includes specific things related to diagnostics, and you know, that feeds diagnostic hardware to help diagnose vehicle stuff. We also have in account 530904 GPS tracking expenses through Samsara. And Matt, I don't know, do you want to explain a little bit about what that is?
Sure. So on some of our heavy use vehicles, we did a trial run of the Samsara GPS AVL equipment, in particular the sanitation trucks. They seem to be heavy users of vehicle maintenance for obvious reasons. It's got a lot of moving parts, used very, very much throughout the year. So they are heavy users of vehicle maintenance. This product, which is installed and what we did a trial on, provided the vehicle maintenance division with real-time data about things that could contribute to those vehicle maintenance related issues that they're dealing with. Things like onboard diagnostics, if you will, hard braking, inefficient acceleration, all of the things that the drivers are told about, and our supervisor does a good job in making sure to do it, but it really gives real-time feedback about what's happening in the trucks and when it's happening. It also can detect issues of performance in terms of the truck before it becomes a complete repair and tear down issue. So the trial period ran out. There was both a decision by our vehicle maintenance supervisor as well as our sanitation department supervisor that these are viable alternatives and something we want to install on the vehicles, so we budgeted and funded for it here. I think there are expanded potentials for that particular type of software in streets and parks equipment, different areas where we can explore efficiencies there, but that is not included in this particular area of funding.
Bigger accounts in the vehicle maintenance budget include a little more than $100,000 for just general shop materials and supplies. If we go a little bit further down, so that's on page 161. If we go to page 162, I'll just point out that the subtotal for account 54070.01 of $377,000. This is where you're basically seeing the maintenance and repair pieces, estimates for our vehicles broken down by department. And this is really kind of the biggest chunk of the vehicle maintenance budget outside of labor costs. But typically, this is an area that we spend an awful lot of time reviewing during the budget reviews with Bill and user department managers, really trying to get a realistic estimate based on the condition of the vehicles that they have and replacements that are coming up, what we think we're going to spend keeping those vehicles in running order. So this is an area that gets extra scrutiny. This is also an area that, I mean, ultimately if we get to a point where, we find that, hey, we need a little more, or, we need to move some monies around or come back for a supplemental, this would be an area where we would do that, especially if we get something that's an unusual or unplanned, expensive repair or something. That may be the case, but for the most part, we try to allocate these dollars based on the repair and maintenance demands that we expect from each of the departments. So, for example, you'll see streets has a large chunk here at $60,000, sanitation close to $100,000, electric vehicles. So, these are vehicles that departments that have a lot of vehicles. They have a lot of heavy equipment. They have equipment that the repairs tend to run a little costlier. So that's vehicle maintenance. Vehicle maintenance is an internal service fund, as is the next budget, the Information Technology Fund, which will jump to page 166 in the transaction reports. And there are two big accounts in the IT fund, and it's basically really two what they call super blankets that relate, one to software related items, software support, annual maintenance costs, and the other relates to hardware items. So on page 166, you begin to look at the software maintenance costs, and if you kind of look down page 166 into 167, you'll see that there are dozens of line items. A couple of the bigger things that I'll point out, you know, the support, which is kind of the annual software maintenance piece, for example, on electric SCADA system is about $13,500. Antivirus software that, you know, protects all of our computers, that's about a little over $6,000. We spend a little more than $10,000 on the phone system. VMware, it's about $11,000. VMware is software that basically allows us to operate virtual servers. It's a standard in IT departments, but it's basically allowing us to almost like mimic some, you know, back up a particular server virtually instead of having to have the hardware there. But it's you know, I can't do justice by explaining it other than I can say it's specifically designed to create virtual server operations. So together, we're estimating we're going to be somewhere around $365,000 of expenses toward those type of items. If we go a little bit further down on page 168, under IT hardware, and you scroll through really the next 2 pages, you'll see several line items for hardware, miscellaneous hardware items. And the way that we budget here is that, you know, our IT guys are estimating the spend by department on various pieces of you know, hardware. So if somebody's getting, say, new laptops, that's budgeted separately. But if, you know, and for example, at the top of page 169, police miscellaneous hardware items, $2,000. That could be everything from, you know, replacing a webcam, somebody needs a new keyboard, maybe somebody's getting a small external hard drive. So they're guesstimates as to you know, what we think we're going to spend by department. You'll see that specifically one of the items in here that's not budgeted and broken down by department is you'll see that we've got the $27,800 for PCs. So over the last couple of years, our IT department has basically been going through the city's fleet of computers and replacing them, refreshing them, to make sure that all of our computers can work with Windows 11. So when we get into October of 2025, Microsoft will stop supporting Windows 10. Some of the computers that we've had throughout the city were not up to whatever the minimum specs were to work with Windows 11. So they've been doing that over the last couple of years, and we've got about roughly about 25 computers to replace this next year in 2025. So that's what that line item refers to. Altogether, the hardware piece of this is about 162. So really between the hardware and the software, about $500,000 of expenses there. Building and planning, you know, I'm not sure if Jeff had covered this during the economic development and planning, but I'll just point out on page 171 of the transaction reports, of course, you see a decrease in licenses and permits revenue because things were handed off to the county. You see $23,000 budgeted here for the departmental share of plan review and permitting software, some consulting services that may be needed, but really no other comments on that. And again, I apologize if some of you have already heard that piece. Next up, the mayor's budget. If we look, really the operating expenses start on page 183 of the transaction reports. We've got a little under $2,500 budgeted for different event fees, dues. This is the chamber, Ohio municipal activities and those kind of things. That's flat compared to what our 2024 estimate was and our 2024 budget. We've got some monies budgeted for subscriptions and memberships, slight increase from our 24 estimate to 25, and that really just reflects the increased dues for the Ohio Municipal League. For the most part, other expenses are the same. There's an increase in what's labeled miscellaneous expense. The largest single piece of this is the contribution towards the annual fireworks program.
The Medina County Trail is a new item.
Yeah,
page 183 in the middle.
Yeah, so that is the city's, find it here, city's contribution towards,
I can fill that in.
yeah,
So-
I can't remember.
So the Wadsworth, Medina, and Brunswick all came together and agreed to contribute an amount towards a new individual who will be dedicated through to work on trail projects through Medina County's park system. And so each community is contributing that $15,000 amount towards that person's wages and salaries and services. And that's what that line item is.
Medina County is employing the individual,
Yeah.
taking care of benefits, and taking care of, the app and the other between the cities.
And we have plans for
Trail
using?
planner is designated to work on trails to connect Wadsworth to Medina and Medina.
So there is a plan for how they're going to use this person?
Yes.
You're saying, okay, good. I like that cooperation between cities.
Next budget would be the,
A real quick question, back up to building and planning. With the Medina County doing the inspections, code enforcement would be taken care of here
yeah,
by...
so Matt Tom had asked me about code enforcement, and I just echoed what you previously said, is that at least in the short term, Jeff Kaiser is handling those type of things.
Okay.
Is that our plan going forward?
No, we will be hiring an individual who will be doing code enforcement work exclusively. In fact, I believe we haven't posted it. I've reviewed the position description for posting for that position. So we hope to do that. And we hope to combine a couple of different items that have gone unattended more recently in that position. It's going to take a unique person to be able to do it all, but we think there's enough work. For instance, dog catching responsibilities, some of those responsibilities that have fallen by the wayside, that is a code that is part of enforcement, but it's different than property maintenance related code. So we kind of need we need a person who has communication skills and the ability to enforce codes, which not everyone has, quite honestly, and then to be able to work with our prosecutor, if need be, do some of those types of things. So that will be a posted position very shortly, if it hasn't already been posted.
In the meantime, those calls go to Mr. Kaiser, though?
They do,
Okay.
they do, I'm
All right.
sorry, yes,
Okay.
they do.
No problem. Thank you.
Certainly, if they're not getting addressed, I can handle
Right,
those calls
okay.
too.
Right. Thank you.
Human Resources Director, small increase in the line item for physical exams and drug testing. That's on page 201. The bulk of that is pre-employment testing. We spend about $37,000 on various office contracts and services. So here's where you'll find a budget for classified ads when we're hiring folks, compliance, subscriptions, some other, piece in here for psychological testing and SUMA, fees for SUMA's corporate health, who assist with the pre-employment physicals and screening. We've got an allocation of about 15 grand under IT software and support. That's the allocation for New World software that's allocated to human resources. And Tara handles all of the budgeting, and we don't use the New World or the OpenGov module, but that's basically our main kind of expense piece that feeds the budget on the for the employee portion of labor costs and those kind of things. We've on 202, we've got approximately about $16,000 budgeted for employee recognition, and that's including Employee of the Month recognition. The bulk of it really relates to the employee recognition luncheon. We've got hall rental, we've got the meal, we've got small recognition awards. That's it for human resources, engineering. First thing I'll point out on page 204 of the transaction reports, the second line item down, 42010.24, charges for engineering, or charges for services, engineering, site plan, and review. I'll just point out that, with Glenn's assistance and some of the changes that, been presented to council over the last several months, we believe there's an opportunity here to realize much greater revenue in the engineering bureau for some of the services. So that's a positive. Tom, I know you had asked me about engineering labor. I will say, if you've not heard, Gina is no longer with us. So Gina, who replaced Vicki, Gina had a wonderful opportunity with the Army Corps of Engineers. And unfortunately, they kind of gave her pretty quick, you need to be here by this time. So while we'll miss her, we have posted for another city engineer to fill the role that she had. So if you remember, we kind of split things up a little bit. Glenn Davis was hired and kind of works more in the engineering development stuff. Gina, who was taking over for Vicki, was really more of the city project type engineering stuff. So we are seeking a replacement for that. And I believe we're backfilling what would have been Gina's position that's come up. So we hope to be back to full strength there shortly. But we wish Gina well. It sounds like a pretty cool opportunity as far as engineering goes, I guess. Let's see if anything really particular jumps out. You've got really kind of the wages and the personnel costs are really kind of the largest piece of all of this. For engineers, you've got, their continuing education requirements. Some of them are PEs, which is an engineering certification. You've got some software in here, they use GIS applications and some other things that we pay an annual maintenance fee for that is not budgeted in IT. Of course, they get money set aside for legal ads and recording fees and those type of things. Portion of New World is attributable to them. There are, under operating expenses and professional services, there's basically line items that are kind of catch-alls for either technical project assistance or planning assistance, but basically money set aside for consulting type work that may be needed beyond our in-house expertise. Any other questions about engineering?
Michael, I'm going to pause here. 6:30. I'll tell some folks gathering outside if they were. No.
After the engineering budget, general government, which is 110,7,400, and that is going to be really starting on page 210 of your transaction reports. This typically has to do with general items or items that may relate to City Hall or of benefit throughout the city. I'll point out a couple of items in here. There's money budgeted for carpet replacement and installation on the second floor of City Hall. If you've seen some of that carpet, it's pretty old and worn. We did replace the carpet in the elevator, but probably needs to be replaced. We've got generator maintenance. One of the new items is we've budgeted some monies or hired someone to help with maintenance around City Hall. If you remember that our Parks Department guys also double as our facilities maintenance guys, and depending on the time of the year and you know, their workload at the time of the year, as well as their expertise, you know, we don't always have somebody at the ready that can kind of jump in and do something, you know, maybe as quickly as a plumber could or something like that. You know, we've also budget things like our HVAC maintenance and our elevator maintenance out of this budget. There's some money budgeted in here for citywide bill inserts. So when we send out the utility bill messages, so those are the messages on the back of utility bills on a monthly basis, that doesn't cost us or anyone anything. But when we include inserts, there's a cost for printing those inserts and putting them in the envelopes that our processor charges us. Typically, if it's some type of insert that's requested by an outside party, they pay for those, but there are things that we will pay for. So, for example, we may pay for advertising, you know, the smart thermostat program. You know, we may have inserts for the LEAF program, things that would not be billed back to someone else. So we include some of that here. Paper products, bathroom towels, soap, those type of things are budgeted out of this budget.
If you could back up just a minute, what's the master planning? Right underneath citywide bill inserts.
Matt, we budgeted $7,000 for master planning services. And let me look at what I had in my notes for that.
I believe as Mr. Testa takes, we were talking with Gina at the time and Glenn at the time about looking at revisiting some of the master water plans and the sanitary plans.
And transportation.
And transportation plans, because Glenn had identified that there were large gaps in some of those plans, some non-existent planning.
Potentially a placeholder too for Glenn's traffic study of the master. Potentially a placeholder for Glenn's traffic study master plan as well, a contribution toward that.
Mr. Testa, how do we acquire our like janitorial supplies and, you know, paper and that type of thing?
It's through a contract with Cintas.
Cintas, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't really have anything else on general government. As we move into the enterprise funds, stormwater operating fund, which would be page 230 in the transaction reports, I'll just point. Oh, well, yeah, I'm not sure if you guys wanted to go over that again since.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Stormwater operating fund. One noteworthy item on page 230 is that the chairman of the Stormwater Commission, so we had not met for a little while. We've now had a couple of our quarterly meetings, and the plan going forward will be to meet once a quarter. The chairman has indicated to me that he wants to take a look at potentially increasing stormwater assessment charges. So what you see here from a revenue standpoint does not include any type of charge a rate increase there, but I could potentially see that down the road as having an impact. There's really, there's no labor costs assigned here, so you've basically got pieces, parts for the stormwater system, cleaning the inlets, those type of things. We have money budgeted here for the dry basement program, so we have $15,000 budgeted here for that. CCTV, or the closed caption television services of the storm sewer, $50,000 budgeted for that. A share of concrete crushing expenses that's also split with the streets department and the water department. We have the street sweeping contract, $128,000 budgeted here. Materials and supplies for the catch basins, roughly about $75,000 budgeted here. Biggest components of that are pipe or precast structures or castings. We also have about roughly $28,000 budgeted for storm sewer related pieces, parts. So this would be things like castings, concrete, precast structures for that piece of it. We've got a transfer out, so in some of the budgets you'll see a transfer to the capital funds. That's what you'll see at the bottom of page 234. So that would be already baked into the capital budget stuff that we reviewed. A lot of it really in the last page and a half is just debt service on prior projects. When we get into these next budgets, so for example, the next budget we'll move to is the cable budget. Just to provide some context here. In the budget book for the enterprise funds, they typically start out with something that says telecom fund. And that is the roll-up of all operating budgets and all capital budgets that relate to telecom. After that, the next thing is usually operating budget fund, which is the roll-up of all operating budgets, and then it'll go to a capital budget page, which is kind of the roll-up of all capital stuff. And then we'll get to budgets like this. So in particular with telecom, you'll see cable, internet, and VoIP. These are the kind of the building blocks that ultimately are what rolls up into these others. But the reason that we're not starting with those is, well, we've covered the capital budgets, but the, like the main operating budget is really just the sum of these, but it doesn't provide the same level of detail that we'll get by breaking them down here. So the first budget that we'll look at is the cable budget, which is one of three. So you've got cable, internet, and VoIP that kind of roll up into the telecom budgets. Charges for services, basically cable and TV fees is the largest piece there. You'll see that we don't have anything proposed expense-wise for personnel costs under cable in 2025 as we kind of switch to more of the internet and the streaming and the fiber. And one of the things that the finance department did is, they basically reallocated expenses between the budgets in a way that made sense to them. So everything is still in there. It's just the way they wanted to track the budgets. They moved some things around, so you'll find it in different places. Basically, the largest, we get into page 252, under software support, you'll see a large expense that says software billing, control, VOD scheduling. Biggest piece of that is Sonar. So Sonar is the new procurement software for CityLink. So procurement is basically what's assigning all of the services to customers, and it's also what's rolling up and rolling into or being exported into New World for billing purposes. So, you know, if a customer at 123 Smith Avenue says, I want this package of internet and I want VoIP and I want this here, it's basically entered into Sonar now. Sonar then supports the billing platform, and it also supports work orders for sending guys out in the field to do, you know, whatever needs to be done. So it is replacing Dexatrack and ETI as the work order and the procurement systems that we've used in the past. It's been a big part of really what's been behind the fiber project work that's been done over the last 5 or 6 months. Fiber tree maintenance, another item. This is what it sounds like. It's basically cutting back trees, similar to what they would do with the electric department to clear trees from electric lines. It need to do the same with fiber lines. Contractual services, CityLink programming expenses. There's a couple items here that in the past we've spent roughly about $3 million on content costs. One of the biggest benefits of the fiber project is that our content costs are going to decrease considerably because it's a lot cheaper to pay for streaming content than it is cable content. So that $3 million or so that we would have had in content expenses in the past is now estimated at $2.8 million. Still, a chunk of that relates to the cable subscribers because it'll be a 3-year process to get everybody switched over. But you'll also see that now we've divvied that up to a portion of streaming customers, and the cost per subscriber is a little less expensive there. So our estimate is we're going to save a couple $100,000, and it's actually a little bit more than that because we probably would have been closer to about 3.3 if everybody just stayed on cable. But every month, as we move new people over installations, the costs, we're achieving greater savings. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, when the project's done, we would expect that our annual costs will decrease annually by about $1 million. So that's a big part of what the payback piece looks like for the project. That's what you're seeing in account 53-160 on page 252. Page 253, we have roughly about $75,000 for equipment. A big chunk of this you can see is the Roku and traditional set tops. So, you know, we still have traditional set top boxes for somebody that hasn't switched over to fiber and may have a problem with that. The Roku units, so if somebody doesn't have Roku, and if you're not familiar with it, it's basically a device that you can plug into a TV and it allows it to function as kind of a smart TV. If somebody's switching over to streaming and they don't have something like that, we're providing them with the Roku stick as a courtesy to facilitate that streaming. So the $60,000 is really for two things. One, it's the purchase of the Roku sticks and also some replacement set-top boxes while we still have folks on cable that might have a problem with theirs. The franchise fee that you see, so if you remember when we were talking about WCTV, I talked about a big chunk of their revenues, about 92%, coming through fees from cable television. A large piece of that, about half of that comes from Spectrum, and the other half is coming from our cable fees. So here in this particular budget on page 254, when you see the $199, $599, that is basically the percentage of our cable revenue that gets paid out as a franchise fee to WCTV. The rest of their franchise fees are coming from Spectrum. The next budget, 605-6520, Internet. This is where you're going to see a lot of the fiber project. Internet fees. Cable television has been on a kind of a downward trend, albeit slow. It's been a downward trend. Certainly we expect to gain more customers when we switch to the streaming project and to turn that around, but internet has typically been an upward trend, obviously with just, you know, all of the changes with Wi-Fi and those kind of things. That's the hot growth area. Again, you'll see the biggest component of this is user fees. The charges for internet service, for internet equipment. Remember, there are routers and modems and plume units out there. You'll also see that, you know, expenses have been shuffled around from a labor standpoint, but when we get into the operating expenses of this, not everything is fiber related, but you'll see, for example, under IT software and support, you'll see the maintenance agreement costs for a lot of the hardware, so the Juniper routers, some of the stuff that we use to manage the data center, those particular items, if they're specific to telecom, are budgeted here and not in the IT budget. When we get a little further down into 53-160 under contractual services, you know, here's where we've got some circuit costs and a lot of the pieces, parts that relate to aspects of the fiber project. So, for example, the first item there, $55,000 for the redundancy, relates to circuitry that supports the SFN or the streaming product. The next two items, Everstream and Cogent, each at $72,000. Those are also the main circuit and a backup circuit for delivering the fiber and the content to us in Wadsworth. Plume support, that's basically for supporting for the Plume devices. Together, you know, we're close to about $320,000 of costs, and think of that as kind of the behind-the-scenes infrastructure, if you will, that kind of delivers a lot of what we need from other places to Wadsworth. Roughly about $500,000 budgeted for equipment, tools, non-capital. So here's where we'll see a couple items, the larger dollar amount items that relate to the fiber project. So where you see under the description FTTH, if you remember, that was the original moniker, that it was fiber to the home or fiber to the premises. We've gotten away from that, just call it the fiber project. But it's basically the cost to purchase the actual devices, so the Plume devices, the customer gateway, the modems, the equipment. The ONT is the optical network piece that kind of goes on the outside of the house, that then you connect by a cable to the inside of the house in the modem. You've got the next account down, the 540703, materials and supplies, equipment, a large chunk in here, $450,000, that relate to basically construction materials for the contractor Gudenkopf. So, you know, Gudenkopf is basically being paid for their labor, but because, you know, we can buy in bulk and because our project manager can obtain some good prices, we're buying a lot of the pieces, parts that they're using in construction. And that's what you're seeing here. VoIP, voice over internet protocol, phone service. This is a relatively small piece of the puzzle, but we've got expenses, really the largest pieces for the VoIP service fees, about 70 out of the 120,000. There's some regulatory fees budgeted here, and so, I mean, between the VoIP service fee and the regulatory fees, that accounts for the bulk of this budget. Moving on to the wastewater fund. So the wastewater fund, ultimately, you can think of it in two pieces. There's the wastewater treatment plant, and then there's the wastewater collection system, or basically the sewer system that you know, is underground, leading to the wastewater treatment plant. Typically here you'll find the salaries and wages for plant employees on page 272. On 273, when we start to get into the operating expenses, you'll see that there's some training expenses for the lab folks and some of the continuing ed requirements. Small amount. There's not a tremendous amount of employees there, but about $6,000 in costs. We have a contract for hauling away the sludge. And the sludge, if you think about it, it's basically kind of the waste that's been compressed and a little bit of water added, and almost like patties is the form that it's ultimately ends up in, and somebody hauls that away for us. That's about $55,000. We've budgeted to have one of the pumps rebuilt, $15,000. We've used some outside lab testing services. That's $20,000. Here again, you'll see miscellaneous engineering assistance for different aspects of services that Christie may need at the wastewater treatment plant. One of the things that you may remember from our capital budget discussions is that, you know, the plant was overhauled in 2008, so we're getting toward the near, you know, the life expectancy of those things. So, you know, more and more things will break or you know, need somebody to take a look at to even diagnose what might be going on before we can even make a replacement. So there's some money set aside for that. There's engineering assistance or professional consulting placeholder for assistance with the NP DES permit or discharge permit. Shop materials and chemicals, polymers, sodium, aluminate, sodium hypochlorite. Together, you know, chemicals are estimated at a little under $125,000. You've got material and supplies for equipment, so there's a total of about $87,000, and this is budgeted for belts, pump parts, blower pieces, filters, variable frequency drive parts, those type of things. So somewhat akin to like Bill Heckler's parts and supplies for the shop and for vehicles, kind of the equivalent of that here for the wastewater treatment plant in terms of the equipment at the plant, keeping that running. That's a big part of the cost for the treatment plant. The collection system and the operating expenses for that and your transaction report start on page 279. Again, you'll see a small amount for education and certifications. If you remember in the stormwater budget, we had some concrete crushing expenses that were shared with a couple other departments, so you'll see a share of that here. We have a root foaming program, so basically what root foaming is supposed to do is, you know, literally you stick a foam in the ground and it is supposed to eat away at vegetation that might grow up in between the pipes, and, you know, where the pipes come together if there's a crack in the pipe, and it's a tool for keeping the pipes unclogged the best we can. So we have a service where somebody does that, and it's typically they do it one time, they come back again, do it the next time, and then they don't do it for another 3 years. If for some reason we were to have a problem with an area that they treated, they would come back and treat that for free. But that's what the root foaming is. An allowance of $25,000 for just general maintenance and repairs of the infrastructure. Yeah, that's it. Moving on to water, the water department. We break this down into water meters, the treatment plant, and then water distribution, which is again the underground infrastructure. Access, you know, to the water department the same as the collection system is to the sewer department. We've got wages and salaries budgeted for the guys that maintain the meters and do the installations. really the purchase of some meters and pieces, parts are built into the budget. But if you remember from the capital budget, one of the big items is going to be replacing the water meter system in early part of 2025. So that project is somewhere in the neighborhood of about $1.9 million. And really, some meters will be replaced, but the biggest piece of that are basically the communication units that send the signals to our system. What's happened is, those things are wearing out. The batteries go in those. It's not really something that is user replaceable, and the manufacturer really doesn't make those anymore. So it's going to be replacing that piece of it, which is probably a good $1.5 million of it, of the project, and then whatever meters need to be replaced. So that'll be a big project that these guys are involved with to some extent, but it's not budgeted in the operating budget. We would have covered that. Moving on to the water treatment plant, this is Dana's group over on Broad Street. So the wages and salaries of Dana's guy, the lab folks, they're budgeted in this budget. You'll see the detail for their labor costs on page 300 of your transaction reports. You've got some plant-specific software maintenance items, a small amount, about $7,700. You'll see that we've got approximately $130,000 in contracted services related to the pump. So there's maintenance contracts and some of the equipment that's used for analyzing water samples, for generator maintenance, motor and pump maintenance, lagoon clean out. Basically, between cleaning out the lagoon and removing the weeds, that's about $70,000 out of roughly the $130,000 in expenses. There's $12,000 to repair one of the well motors. Approximately $52,000 would be the payment to Barberton for the Chippewa well lease. That's budgeted here. American Water Works Association membership budgeted here, $4,500. Pieces, parts related to the SCADA system budgeted here. The shop, the materials and supplies, chemicals, big piece of the budget, approximately $225,000. The biggest piece of that is $160,000 for lime. So over the last few years, we've seen the cost of chemicals increase, but we're also purchasing a little bit more, just given our usage and what we're treating. So that's why you'll see a pretty good increase if you look back to, say, 2022, where we were only at $100,000, and we've more than doubled that over the last few years. A big part of that was the run-up in prices post-COVID. $17,000 for lab supplies. That's a $2,000 increase over previous year. Miscellaneous pieces, parts, chlorinator and pump materials and supplies account for about 2/3 of the total budget of $42,000. Fuel for the generator at $6,000. Our water supply license is budgeted here. Moving on to water distribution, and again, this is the group that would be under Derek and his guys. This is the underground stuff where you see the water main breaks and those type of things. That's Derek's crew that's involved with this. You get training for the guys. We've got some software maintenance stuff in here for the share of the work order management system, a share of the concrete crushing that we had talked about. We've got repair, a small budget for contracted services related to valves and repairs that maybe we need somebody outside of our own in-house expertise to handle. If we've got some money budgeted, 25,000 toward the bottom of 309, and it says the description is 120 water, which is actually the name of a company. So, you know, one of the things that is going on at the EPA level is basically this mandate that, hey, you got to start replacing your lead service lines. This company helps with the notification process and kind of finding where those are. And it's a pretty big change in terms of what we'll need to do, how often we'll need to test things. So this is definitely something that, you know, it's on us. We were really required to turn in the kind of the very preliminary piece of almost like an inventory of our lead service lines in October. But this will be an area of focus over the coming few years as we work toward satisfying all of the things that the EPA is going to require us to do. Miscellaneous tool replacement and equipment replacement. In account 540707 materials and supplies lines, this is where you'll see basically the parts and supplies related to maintaining the underground infrastructure. You know, this is where we're purchasing concrete, the repair parts for different pieces of the underground lines and connections. If you may remember when we were on the council tour, we also went into that room where they had all kinds of pieces, parts, and valves and different things. So this is the area of the budget that basically funds those type of things.
What's the reason for the more than triple the concrete cost from 2024 estimate of $6,000 to $20,000 for 2025?
Let me look at my notes on that.
Is there the reason I see that's gone up, is that we finding a lot more breaks, or is it just the cost of materials, or combination?
I think there's a combination. That's what I would tell the committee at this point. I think we've had an increasing amount of breaks. I won't even call it unusual anymore. And I think the concrete costs have actually increased. They have.
Yeah, and I think we've got some, like for the loading dock, I think there's some concrete.
Yeah, there's some repair work that if you went out to the plant, remember, some of that's included in that as known concrete related repairs.
Okay.
Utility billing. So you heard Dave mention earlier, hey, what's the name of the group that's across from CityLink? That's the utility billing department. Now, CityLink employees and the utility billing folks are all part of the utility billing department now. So the CSRs that serve CityLink are no longer under CityLink, but they're part of utility billing. And part of the reasoning for that is because that entire group is being cross-trained to take calls, and the work that they do is similar, and they're physically in the same spot. So really, looking at the operating expenses, which start on page 324, you've got some small training expenses. Much of the training is in-house training. Much of the training is something that we're going through and updating previous training manuals. Kevin and some of his staff are providing specific CityLink training to all of the staff down there, including the utility billing clerks. Moving under contracts and services, a couple things here. So one is the bill printing. So we pay for bill printing services for the bills that go out. So we figure roughly about 15,000 total bills for the city. I think a couple thousand of those is probably a reasonable estimate for e-bills. The rest are printed bills. The line item underneath that, the credit card fees from eSuite, MasterCard, Chase, $265. So this has been an issue that we've discussed a little bit over the summer, and where we're at with that is that there were some issues with them basically sending us the amount of fees owed. And it got to the point where, if you remember, they basically just said, hey, look, we're not going to give you your money unless you're taking our fees out. And you know, it's definitely been a work in progress with these guys. You know, this is something new they started this year. And really what they said was, hey, look, and it's the same company. It's a different sister company of the people that own New World. So they basically said, hey, look, the other payment processors that you can use and have used in the past with your billing system, we're not going to let them do that anymore. So if you want to have a payment processor that works with your existing system, you got to choose us. Now they've since come back and said, oh, there's one other processor that no one's ever heard of that will work with them, but that's it. So the plan was for us to see how it goes with them and then make a decision and buy us some time that if it's not going well, we would find another processor. And it might mean that, you know, we need to come up with another solution and have somebody develop something that could take information and stick it into New World for us. Something that, you know, would buy us some time so we did not have to go back to all of our customers and say, hey, for a few months you've got to send in your stuff by an envelope with the stamp, or you've got to come in. So it was really designed to be more for the customer convenience. When we got a larger than expected bill, we started looking at that, and really it ultimately ended up with me going through in pretty significant amount of detail all of the transactions that were in question. And ultimately, I ended up coming up with a number that was a little over $60,000 as saying, hey, you've overcharged us about $60,000 year to date. Now that compares to the $50,000 credit they were willing to give us. Where we're at with that is that I've taken all of the work that I've done and I've given it to Kathy and her group, and they're going through all of the stuff, basically testing my calculations and verifying my findings. I'm still waiting to hear back from them, but when I do, the next step is to go back to the processor and say, no, you don't owe us $50,000, you owe us $60,000. And now, separately from that, you know, one of the things that, you know, we discovered was that we were being overcharged specifically on something related to Visa. And it really wasn't Visa's fault. What happened is when we filled out the application for services, in very simple terms, the Tyler payments did not check the box that said these are utility payments to a government, which would be a much lower risk level. So Visa was charging us, in some cases, what appeared to be 10 times what the fee should have been. That has since been corrected. So we're going to ask for the check to cover the past stuff. And the past stuff, you know, goes back all the way from day one when we started using them through like September 13th when the change was made. So our ongoing fees are, you know, will be closer to what we've paid historically. You know, we're anticipating that the monthly fee will be somewhere in the low 20s. That compares to somewhere between 15 and 20 what we had with Huntington. But, you know, again, the bulk of those fees are Visa and MasterCard fees. And a couple things, you know, we did realize is that just as time has gone on, you know, there is a greater percentage of people that pay electronically. So, you know, there's, you know, basically it's been an increase in e-checks, credit card payments, debit payments, and there's been, you know, somewhat of a decrease in, you know, the old-fashioned payments. But that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is I believe that Chase, their fees are higher just than Huntington's were. But to be fair, you know, the last time we had Huntington's fees, you know, it was a year and a half ago, and we're somewhat maybe comparing apples to oranges because I don't know if Huntington raised their fees, and we can't really use Huntington because it won't work with Tyler payments, but we think that it's a long-winded way of saying that we think what we've got budgeted here should be sufficient. Yeah.
Are we getting a rebate for the Visa discharge?
Yes, so that'll be the...
We're still working on that?
Yeah, so that's what I determined to be 60,000 instead of the 50, and I've asked Kathy and her guys to verify all of that. But yeah, they are.
Thank you for your work on that.
We've got a large chunk in here, budgeted a little over $30,000 for share of New World expenses. We've got the single biggest line item in any of our budgets, just under $22 million for the electricity that we purchase. So this is actually down a little bit from our 2024 estimate, but it's based on information. You know, we basically asked AMP to give us an estimate based on the pricing contracts and what they're looking at with weather forecasts and all of that. And this appears to be a reasonable estimate. That's utility billing. I'll point out that anything that's starting with a 608 is actually part of the electric department. So this is why you're finding utility billing under the electric department. The next division within electric are the electric substations and transmission network. Here you'll see we've got a pretty good chunk, about $700,000 worth of employee expenses here. We've got close to $8,000 in training expenses. We've got roughly about $45,000 for contractive services related to the substations. The biggest line item in here is really kind of a placeholder for for the substation number 4 transformer containment wall, which is what it sounds like. It's a wall that needs significant repair by one of our substations. But we also have miscellaneous substation stuff. The rodent preventive maintenance, sump crocks, oil testing for the transformers, weed control, that's budgeted within that 45. We've got uniform rental expenses in here. Professional services, so smart grid support, engineering, problem solving, and consulting. This is basically a line item for professional consulting services that would be needed by the electric transmission, for the transmission network. We've got a couple items in here for professional services, operating consulting. So for the line item for that is the professional consulting. Is a little bit different than the operating consulting, but the large line item here, SSOE, that's basically an electrical engineer consulting firm, and they're kind of our go-to partner on a lot of technical things that are beyond the expertise of our electrical engineer, Riley Reed, and in particular, work related to a 69,000 volt relay panel is where we need them. Miscellaneous supplies and pieces, parts, lighting upgrades, seal around vaults, security doors, those type of things. 15,000 of the 41,000 and 54,070 is for security door locks. So we're upgrading the security at our substations, and we still have some of those to do. 60,000 for various materials and supplies at the substations. Some of that's just miscellaneous stuff. We got bypass switches here, maintenance of the voltage regulators, bypass switches, transfer switches, those type of things. That's basically substations and transmissions. The electric distribution group, you'll see that this is where we get a bulk of the folks. Total labor expenses here, roughly about $4.2 million. This is where a lot of our folks are. You'll see here we have a much larger line item for education and meeting expenses, and that's because basically AMP's line worker training program is something that we're typically sending several employees to a year, and it's expensive. It's $3,300 a year, but these are the folks that are up there working on this high voltage stuff, and this is kind of the best training program that we can send them to. Under software and support, you'll see a couple fees totaling about $90,000 related to Itron, IEE, and Openway. So these are software support that basically relates to a couple of the, for lack of a better word, connections in the electrical systems. That it's basically ultimately taking readings from the meter and it's sending it to another part of our system that's then sending it to the billing system. So both of these things are different software pieces that relate to kind of a continuum of services. When you're starting at the meter to get it to this point, you've got IEE software, and then from this point basically to our billing system you've got Openway software, but it's basically the software that is allowing us to take automated meter readings for the electric department and ultimately end up with all of that data into our billing system. $15,000 for PPE, rubber glove and sleeve testing. So there's specialized testing to make sure that you don't have a minute hole in the gloves for the work these guys do. The folks that we use also, are considered, kind of like the gold standard for testing, but they also provide us replacement gloves while our gloves are being in there tested. So that's part of the expense. You'll see that we've got a couple $100,000 budgeted under contracted services. Trees, so that is basically for a contractor to come in and trim trees off of the electric lines. We do a different section of the city. We alternate those. One year we do one section, the next year we do the other. That's what the T1 and T2 stand for. Get uniform rental, about $37,000. Thermostat program recurring costs. So we pay, the way the thermostat program works is that we're paying the program sponsor X dollars a year, and it's typically around $80 a year to be in the program. The program ultimately, for every subscriber that we pay the $80 for, we save about $105 to $110 in the reduction of our utility costs. So the way the smart thermostat program is designed to work is that on the days when there's an expectation of the highest demand, so it's typically going to be in the summer when it's a really hot day for a long time and everybody's expected to have their air conditioners on. What the thermostat program does is it for people that are in their program, it automatically goes and turns their thermostat down a little bit. Now, the reason that this is helpful to us and where we save the money is that it's a goofy system in terms of how our utility costs are assigned. So for capacity costs, for example, and capacity costs are basically fees that we're paying to the utility companies to make sure that they stand by with enough capacity to meet our biggest demand. That level of demand and the resulting fee are based on the one worst day of the year. So anything we can do during the days that could be considered one of our worst days or one of our top 5 days, because one relates to capacity, the other is related to the transmission costs, or the costs that we pay coming across the lines, and that price is based on the 5 the 5 top days. So it's really kind of cherry pick the days in there. And on those days, typically AMP and all of the municipalities that are part of AMP in our area get the same message saying, hey, do whatever you can to reduce demand for this particular hour or for these particular 3 hours, because anything we can do, let's say we do, as an entire group, maybe we reduce it by a megawatt or 2 megawatts. That means a megawatt or 2 megawatts of less capacity that needs to be built into that capacity charge that would affect our capacity charges for all of next year. So the thermostat program is just one tool in our efforts to get citizens to help with reducing the combined load of peak, what we call peak demand days. Miscellaneous tools and small hand equipment items, replacement items for electric. We've got LED fixtures, about $100,000 budgeted for LED fixtures for street lights this next year. Those are the big costs. Sanitation operating fund, of course, charges for your sanitation bills are the main revenue source here. All of the wages for sanitation, all in with benefits, under $1 million are budgeted here. The big expenses, the single biggest expense is basically the tipping fees. So the fees at the county processing facility where we take the trash, we're estimating those fees to be about $1.3 million in 2025. We get fees for the EPA fees related to disposal, that's about $30,000. And then you'll see a $500,000 item. So this is similar to one of the items we mentioned earlier, where the operating budget is just forwarding those monies to the capital budget. So items that were in the capital budget, which as you may remember, we had a large Packer truck amongst those. That money's coming from here going into that fund. So it's pretty common that between the operating and capital funds within the same group, we transfer monies to, depending wherever it might be needed to keep the fund balances healthy.
While we're on this fund, last year we talked about reviewing the green sticker program for the grass recycling and everything. And the previous service director was going to look into it and get us some information. It's been a year now and I haven't seen anything come back. If we need to adjust the rates, because we spent $189,000 for a truck that we was going to lose $31,000 a year on. And I thought that needed to be adjusted to be fixed. But I haven't seen anything or heard anything.
I can tell you, Mr. Copping and committee members, I have not personally done any work in that effort, but I do remember that discussion that you're bringing to light of. So if you would allow Mr. Tess and I to get together and take a look at that. That fell off the radar, quite honestly. I don't recall working on that at all. So
well, if we was losing $31,000 last year, how much did we lose this year?
Yeah, we need to evaluate and analyze that sticker cost and take a look at that.
Because I had not done anything with it either, but I'll put together an analysis.
I just thought this was the right point to bring that up.
It is. The downtown maintenance and repair budget, 525, this is largely related to the downtown snow and ice program. So the revenues of about $35,000 largely match the program expenses. Those revenues are assessments for downtown. So I believe that we have received 60% for the downtown portion of the program. although it looks like we're a little bit under that for the south side portion. And I know Tom was going to reach out to one of the guys that circulates some of the petitions down there to see if, you know, there's just it looks like maybe a couple people didn't respond altogether, and, you know, maybe they were missed, but, you know, the plan would be to, you know, come back to council with the resolution for the assessments of that. But basically, the two sections, the south side and downtown, this is the program where we would hire a contractor who comes down and basically does the sidewalks, the on-street parking areas, parking lots. There's some stuff they do for the city too, like a gazebo park and East Park and those kind of things. But you know, the process is typically asking the property owners in those areas, hey, do you support this service? Here's an estimate of what the cost would be. And the cost estimate is typically for the downtown area somewhere in about the $8.50 to $9 range. I will tell you that this last year, our total cost, because of the snowfall we got, were between both the south side and the downtown area, were only like a total of $10,000. So it's a little bit of a guesstimate on my part, because really the driver is how much snow we're going to get, and absent, you know, something, you know, relatively certain, it's just a guess. And that's it.
Okay. Any questions? Or, we can move on to the other section here. I know you provided electric department CityLink subscriber updates for us to take a look at here, which are just in the notes.
Yeah. I will mention, though, my understanding is that in terms of our next meeting, that we may need to either adjust the day or time. So I'll leave that up to you guys, but I know, Tom, I think you have something.
Yeah, I have a
going on.
conflict at 5:30, so if you can move it earlier to where we're done by 5:30, we can still keep that same date.
So I can accommodate any time.
4:30?
If we think we'll be done in an hour at that point,
I
yeah.
think so.
My commitment's here in town, so I don't have to travel. So if we can move that to 4:30, I'd appreciate it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So the next meeting will be December the 16th, 4:30, here in council chambers. All right. Any other comments or anything by anyone? All right. Then I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
And we are adjourned. 7:38.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.